Hi everyone, I'm super excited to host David Niewiadomski, General Manager at Building Works, which is a portfolio company of Zero RFI. Thanks a lot, David, for being on the show.
Great to be here, Mayor.
David, take us back to your college days till this date. What would be your top career highlights?
Well, I started in civil engineering. After my first semester, I switched to construction management and really haven't looked back since then. So, I was fortunate to be in the engineering building still, but, I wanted to be more hands-on in the real world stuff on sites and whatnot. I kind of come from a family of engineers and gravitated towards construction and really have been in the industry ever since, on multiple different sides from the sub side, the GC side, and some time on the owner developer side, and have been really hands-on in both the pre-construction estimating and also project management and the operation. So I've really been able to be fortunate enough to be hands-on in different aspects of the building process, which is extremely complex.
And if you look back those, what would be a strong pivotal moment?
Well, I think I was fortunate to start my career at PCI, which really gave me a really solid foundation, in kind of understanding project controls, how to, the complex projects being thrown into the fire on Oshpod healthcare work at the early career makes everything else seem a lot easier after that. So, it really made me kind of forces you to really look ahead and try to clear the path as best you can instead of consistently putting out fires, which, is a lot of what project managers do. When you go through these complex builds, you're really forced to assess things and make assumptions far down the road from, when you're in pre-construction, even understanding all the different indirect impacts, not just understanding your hard costs, but also your soft costs. And I think ultimately that made me a really good estimator from having those complex situations on project management and spending a lot of time in the field too. When I started my career, I was in the field for about 3 years, not stuck in an office, which I think for people that are looking to get in the industry, as much as you can be in the field, talking with your foreman, talking with your superintendents, understanding all the different intricacies that are in construction. That's really where I feel I was fortunate enough to be able to say I started my career at. And, I really lean back on that foundation, even today with different things that I'm doing. And it's not everybody's lucky, but I do think starting as from on the sub side makes you understand things a lot differently than if you're not.
Any mentor or senior who you would like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, if you were in California back in the mid 2000s, Larry Bryan, he's honestly one of the reasons why I decided to move from Michigan, where I went to school at Michigan State, and go to California because I got to intern with him, and he taught me a lot. How to word things. As simple as how do you position an RFI so you get the answer you want? If a lot of RFIs go through and it's, they're not necessarily thinking about the person that's not writing it, but is reading it, and how to get the answer that you want, or making sure that you're getting the full answer. How to position things on change orders too. I think positioning is not talked about enough, and I don't know how much other people are learning about just the simple things, right? How do you write RFIs? How do you set up your documentation so that it's complete and you don't have back and forth?
From that, what made you join Building Works?
Yeah, so I was at Turner before I joined KP Reddy's team. And so last year we were doing a lot of research. We were really focused on the owner's point of view and the different pain points that they deal with when they're dealing with the built environment, all the way from your initial concept of a building, all the way through the turnover process and then operations of that. So we spend a good amount of time just putting together research on that. We talked with contractors, architects, engineers, subs, manufacturers, but the majority of the people that we were targeting to talk to were the building owner themselves, the facilities managers themselves. And so that we could get a holistic perspective and not just be siloed where we're just talking with general contractors or just talking to subs, but getting the actual full picture and really peeling back the onion on the different pain points that we all have to deal with on the industry. Building Works was our first acquisition at Zero RFI, and we had identified that the transition from CapEx to OpEx was not necessarily a smooth, seamless process. It was kind of realizing that the facility side is siloed somewhat, and less so in certain companies, but they're not always involved throughout the process. And the way that they get their data from the construction teams is not in the format that how they think. They think by asset or by product. So Building Works does that. That's all we focus on is the building documentation, the story of the building as it's getting built. And we break everything down how facilities teams think. And we put together a package that's holistic and is not just the product data sheets, the O&M manuals and the warranties, but also the important information about the building that the owner will want to reference in the future when they build their next building and then their next building, and continuously building on that system of record. So that we acquired Building Works in December of last year, and a lot of our clients are repeat customers because they like the standard that we provide to them. And regardless of who's building their building, if Building Works is on the project, they know what their data package is going to look like, how it's set up, the information that's included, so that they know they're going to have a full repository of all the information that they want. And we're able to customize it based on each owner. So we're not putting together a system that works 80% well for everybody, but not 100% well for anybody. And working hand in hand and pulling the facilities teams into the discussion about this very early on in the project. And then as we're collecting them, we allow the general contractors to focus on what they're best at, and that's building a building. I didn't go to college to learn how to organize data, nor did anybody else. So we're providing that kind of pressure relief, especially with the talent crunch that the industry is dealing with, and allowing their teams to focus on the build while we focus on the data. And as we're going through this with them, we're able to track things separate. So we know what our deliverable is. We're not distracted. When I was a PM for many years, I could never really plan my day out because as soon as the field got to the job site, something else became priority 1, 2, and 3. So and you're trying to get your planned items done after the field's left the job site. But this process really gets kind of put to the back seat until the very end because of how many different fires are needing to get put out to keep the project moving so that you can deliver the building to the owner. But a lot of times they're starting to operate the building without all this information. So they're having to figure things out blindly. I've seen projects where the turnover package is taken 6 months to a year after substantial completion. And, not having this information ready on day one makes it really painful for the teams that are operating the building for the next 50 years. And then when they retire, not having a zero learning curve interface on how to access this information makes it even more difficult. Back in the day, it used to be, when I say back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, binders were, the binder methodology would live in the head facilities manager's head. And then when that person retires, the next person's got to figure out, well, where would this piece of information be? So Building Works really removes that and makes it so that whatever piece of information you need to find on your building, you can find it from 3 or 4 different ways. And you're not having to click through a bunch of files and folder structures that are combined PDFs. So you may have 10 or 100 different products in one PDF file. And then they're having to scroll, guess which name the piece of information they're looking for would be in. So we really solved that pain point on the bridge between CapEx and OpEx. So that's where it's really exciting. And one of the reasons why I came over and joined KP's team is that I wanted to start to solve the problems in the industry instead of having to continuously deal with them. So that makes what we're doing really exciting. As boring as Closeout is to a lot of people, and I don't really know a lot of people that actually enjoy doing it. It's nice to be able to focus on a specific problem and actually deliver value to the owner.
Yeah. And what would you say would be an aha moment from the customers you engage with, some proud moment?
Well, our biggest hurdle is just educating people that our service is available. When I was a project manager, it never really crossed my mind, hey, let's look for a company that does closeout. So really, we see a lot of ahas every time we meet with a new prospective customer. And they're like, I didn't realize that we could get our data in this format. We didn't realize that this service was even available. Same thing with general contractors. When I mentioned the talent crunch, it's not just in the field, it's also in the office. So when I graduated from Michigan State in 2008, that's why I was forced to move to California, because there wasn't a lot of construction jobs going on at that time. So a lot of people did not come into the industry just because there wasn't enough work for all the other people that wanted to. So they went to different industries after they graduated. And now we're starting to feel my generation not having enough of us get into the industry between 2008 and 2012. So the office talent crunch is a real thing, just like it is in the field. I guess you could argue maybe it's worse in the field, but it's still impacting both sides of the construction process. So general contractors like that, they can move their people to the next job without having them have to start the next job while they're still trying to close out the previous job that's, in the physical world, it's fully built owners in there, but they're still chasing documents from subs that are no longer on the project. So we're also a relief valve for them. And we also make sure that their documentation part of their contract is not holding up their retainage billing. So accountants love us knowing that they don't have to worry about the documentation piece holding up their last billing. So it doesn't impact their cash flow. So we like to tell people that we benefit everybody that touches this process because they don't have to worry about it. And we're also verifying things. We're not just dumping files into databases. We're actually making sure, is this correct? Is this the right O&M manual for this piece of equipment? Do we have this warranty from this sub? So we have a verification process also. And we're not selling software, we're selling a service.
David, can you walk us through how a onboarding process looks like for Building Works?
And so we go through the specs. We understand what the contract documents are requiring for closeout in terms of what information's needed for different, products on the job. And then we go through that with the owner and the facilities team and the general contractor to make sure, is this what you actually want? They're not necessarily spending a lot of time at the very beginning of the design process, figuring out what do we need for data. So we come in and make sure that what we're providing is actually what they want. So that if there's something different, one thing that's not included in closeout requirements is tracking the owner's FF&E or owner furnished installed equipment. We want to make sure we're putting together a full system of record for the owner. So we'll go through and we'll talk about those different things that are not included. And then we can make adjustments and changes depending on what they actually want. We're collecting more than just your typical closeout package, all the RFIs, change orders, meeting minutes. Obviously, commissioning data is always included, but anything that's digital, we can put into the database so that they have it in the future. Contacts for all the different subs that were on the building, service contacts, and we can get down to each piece of equipment serial number if the owners want. So we go through all these things at the very beginning with the owner. And the initial stage, all we really need to price the job is the plans and specs. It's pretty straightforward and simple for us to understand how big of a job this is going to be for us. But we like to spend time in working with these teams. And then at the very end, we'll obviously do some light training because our system is, if you know one attribute of the product you're looking for, got 3 or 4 different ways to find it, and it's really simple. But it's really spending time and treating the facility side as like a partner in this. And then once we have that understanding, we go through the process and just collect the information, break the submittals down by each individual product as the project is progressing. And once we get like a piece of equipment, like a boiler, and that requires an O&M manual. We're going after that O&M manual. We're not waiting to the very end till that sub is no longer on the job. We're requesting it once we know this, okay, this product is locked in. This is what we're going with. Now we need to start collecting the rest of the information. So it's a real easy process throughout. We're always able to keep the teams updated as to what we're missing, what we have. So they never have a question of what's the completion of our closeout package. And we like to be the squeaky wheel. As annoying as that can be, I always enjoyed follow-ups when I've got a million things going on. We're there to provide those updates, let them know, hey, we need this information. Some contractors will have us go direct to their subs. They just give us the contact information of who to get what from. Other times the contractors want us to just go through their team, which is fine. So we're very flexible in how we can work. Some projects we contract directly with the owner, sometimes with the facilities side of the owner, but half the time we're contracting directly with the general contractors. So it's nice to be flexible to provide value on the project and not have to be rigid in how we operate. And we also, are flexible enough because we're providing a service. So if they're using another asset-centric software, we can populate that too. We also can populate the CMMS system with the documentation because we already break everything down by individual product. We're able to export a CSV that they can import into their facilities management platform. And then if they need the additional resources to populate the PDFs and stuff within that system, we're able to provide that. So really at the end of the day, we're looking to provide as much value to the the owner as possible. And sometimes you just need to be flexible in how you approach that.
I'm curious to know what's the next 3 years of vision look like for Building Works.
Yeah, so we're still operating on the internal tech. So within our systems, nobody else touches the tech that we use to build a database, and we export what we put together so that lives within the local environment of our client, or of the client's client. So if we're working for the general contractor, the end database lives within the owner's ecosystem. So in their infrastructure, we're not selling a software, but we are adding features to Datasphere to solve more problems. So with our teams, we're always asking, what can we do to make your jobs more efficient? And those things we're building in. And we just built in an integration with reality capture with Track 3D. So now the owner has easy their Google Street View access so they can go and see, hey, what's behind this drywall, without having to go and look at 1,000 photos in folders that they can't make sense of. So we're adding different ways to improve the use case of Datasphere, which is what we call the deliverable that we provide. So that's really nice having an internal tech team in Atlanta that can help us solve these problems in real time without having to wait and hope that the construction technology market solves them for us. So we have a lot of control over our technology, making ourselves more efficient too. So we can provide more value quickly and leverage different technologies like AI to improve things. But we'll always have the human in the loop verification. So, as we progress with the new technologies, as we rebuild our internal technologies, we're always going to make sure that we're providing the top level service. And that's going to require an actual human that understands what's going on to be validating that this is correct and this is the correct format that it needs to go into. So over the next few years, we're really pushing to help owners standardize across their projects, because some of our clients were written into their specifications because that they know what Building Works provides, and they don't want to have to rely on, different teams from different companies, because most owners work with more than a few different general contractors. So we're working on more enterprise scale with our technology improvements and continuously identifying ways that we can provide more value, and then building those systems if they need technology in order to provide them. So over the next year, you'll probably see us come out with, new announcements of different things that we're able to now provide. But at the foundation of everything, especially with AI, is going to be the data. And that's where we're looking at it as we're helping owners future proof their buildings, whether they have a plan right now to implement AI within their own ecosystem or not. At least they know, hey, we've got the foundation. So if we do, or maybe we're already actively doing it, we're not going to have to try to recreate this wheel down the road.
How can people support you in your mission?
I think it's knowing that our service is available. We've talked to many GCs that, they'll be like, we already have a good process for that. Knowing that when you need us, we're here. If you have a resource constraint, we're here. And then understanding, the physical world is not the only place to provide value to your clients. Use Building Works as providing the data value to your clients. And then really understanding from the owner side, what can you get? Right? Not be limited to this is how we've always done it, but what do you actually want? How do you want your information delivered to you once you get a building? KP wrote a Substack the other month about, how you could buy a car from any manufacturer and it doesn't matter. You're always going to have, there's always going to be that car manual in the glove box, and it's going to be consistent in how it's formatted. But then, you look at our industry, the owner spends $100+ million on a building, and they don't have something that resembles a building manual. They just have a bunch of folders with combined files that is hard to find the information which you need when you need it. A lot of times when a facility manager needs to find a piece of information, it's an immediate. They they don't have time to waste. Meanwhile, they're spending hours. I think McKinsey did a study saying that facilities managers waste 18% of their time just looking for information. So think about, you're spending $100 million and you're not even getting something that you would get if you spent $40,000 on an automobile. So I think it's really realizing that the industry does not have to continue down the same thing on everything, and you can get more if you ask for it, and or if you know where to go to.
What's the best way to reach out to you if someone wants to try a demo?
Yeah, so you can either email me, David at buildingworksinc.com, or go to our website, buildingworksinc.com. And we've got demo videos, a lot of information depending on the different value propositions for different stakeholders, from owners reps to the owner, facilities teams, contractors. Everybody has a benefit in what we do. So reach out. If you have a project or you just want to understand how we operate better, so you know about us in case you need us in the future. And we'll be happy to, kind of walk you through what we do, show you our final deliverable. I'll keep reiterating, we're not selling software. We're selling an outcome. The outcome is data in a format that your client can use or that the facilities team can use. And happy to set up a demo call. We love coming into companies' offices and just showcasing, doing lunch and learns so that people are aware of this. Because when you're in a resource crunch, now everybody knows, hey, let's call Building Works. They can help us with this problem. Or they don't know, hey, we can provide more value to our clients if we use Building Works.
I have a rapid fire round. You have less than 5 seconds to answer and you have to keep it super brief. What's your favorite
Okay.
movie?
Die Hard.
Any book which made a big impact in your life?
Would say Brett Favre's biography. Read that very young.
Your favorite restaurant?
I'd have to say a barbecue place. I mean, it varies depending on what part of the country you're in, but Salt Lake in Austin, to be more specific.
Any city or country which is in your travel bucket list?
I love to travel the US. We have a lot of great places to go here, but I'd say going to the Rocky Mountains is probably my favorite, or Tahoe.
3 words your best friend would describe you as.
Stubborn, driven, and open minded.
One piece of advice you would like to give to your 18-year-old self.
I would say look outside the industry. Don't just focus on what you're surrounded with, but look at how other things are being done and not just the industry that you're focused in, because that allows your mind to open up and understand or figure out new ways of doing things.
All right. Thank you, David, for being on the show.